Namaskar and welcome to Diplomatic Dispatch with me, your host Vikas Swarup. In this edition of our program, we will focus on the outcome of the recent elections in Nepal. Election to Nepal's House of Representatives and 7 provincial assemblies were held on the 20th of November. Around 17.9 million Nepalese citizens were eligible to vote for the 275 national and 550 provincial parliamentary seats. These elections were very significant, being only the second since the country adopted its Republican Constitution in 2015. Moreover, this was the first time in Nepal's parliamentary history that elections were held after the completion of an entire term of the parliament. It is worth recalling that Nepal has seen over 30 governments in the past 3 decades. The 2017 general elections was won comfortably by the Left Alliance, including the Communist Party of Nepal UML and the Maoists. But much has changed since then. The Communist faction split, with the Maoist centre led by Pushpa Kamal Dahal Prachand and Madhav Nepal's CPN Unified Socialist joining forces with the Nepali Congress chaired by current Prime Minister Sher Bahadur Deoba, who led a 5-party alliance into the election. Nepal has a mixed electoral system. Of the 275 seats in the House of Representatives, 165 are decided by the first-past-the-post voting, while another 110 are elected under the proportional representation system. Voter turnout was just 61% at this election, a significant decrease from the last 2 national elections. The ruling Nepali Congress emerged as the largest party with 57 seats in the direct voting system. Trailing it with 44 seats was the Communist Party of Nepal UML. The Maoist Centre was in 3rd place with 18 seats, and Madhav Nepal's CPN Unified Socialist in 4th place with 10 seats. Under the proportional representation category, the UML emerged as the largest party, garnering 26.76% of votes. The Congress got 25.56%, and the Maoist Centre received 11.15% votes. So, by all accounts, the 5-party pre-poll alliance led by the Nepali Congress will muster the numbers for a simple majority, which is 138 seats in the federal parliament of 275. The election threw up some interesting results. Many senior leaders from the 3 major parties lost their seats. 6 current ministers were defeated. The UML, which had projected its chief KP Sharma Oli as the Prime Minister, failed to secure a majority with its coalition despite banking on emotive and nationalist issues and trying to stoke anti-India sentiment. The other significant outcome of this election has been the spectacular debut of the Rashtriya Swatantra Party led by TV personality Rabi Lamichhane, most of whose members were below 40. It appealed to urban youth with its promise of good governance and was able to secure 7 seats in the direct election. More importantly, it garnered 10% of the vote share, which will give it more seats in parliament. The pro-monarchy Rashtriya Prajatantra Party also did well, winning 7 seats in the direct election, which was a big improvement over the single seat it held last time. In the Madhes region, a new challenger has risen in the form of Janmat Party, led by C.K. Rawat, who once campaigned for the region's secession. The Madhes vote, earlier held by 2 parties, is now splintered. So what do the election results mean for Nepal, for the region, and for India? To discuss this, I am privileged to have with me 2 outstanding experts. Ambassador Ranjit has been India's ambassador to Hungary, Vietnam, and most recently Nepal, where he served from 2013 to 2017. He has also published a book titled Kathmandu Dilemma: Resetting India-Nepal Ties. Professor Sangeeta Thapliyal teaches at the Jawaharlal Nehru University's Center for Inner Asian Studies. She works on strategic issues concerning South Asia with a special focus on Nepal. Welcome to the show. Let me begin with you, Ambassador Ray. How do you analyze the outcome of the recent elections in Nepal?
I think there are several clear messages. One, there was a pretty low voter turnout by Nepalese standards, and it shows a general disenchantment with politics in that country. It's the same leaders for the last 2 or 3 decades that continue to rule the country. It's the same old parties. So there was a certain lethargy. The second thing, of course, is that, this election has thrown up a whole lot of new forces in the country. I mean, you referred to the Swatantra Party. These are all very young people, educated, and these people have no experience of politics in the past. They don't belong to any of the mainstream parties, and many of them have studied abroad. So this is a totally new development, which is a very, very major development, I think, in Nepalese politics. But what is happening today is that there is, as a result of this election, there's a lot of political fragmentation. So I worry about political stability. You referred to, some 30 governments in 30 years. I just hope that, given the present parliament, which everybody refers to as a hung parliament, Nepal can achieve political stability.
Professor Thapliyal, what according to you was the broad message of these elections?
The broad message, according to me, is that coalition politics is here to stay. Since 1991, if you see, except Nepali Congress once when they got some majority, no party in Nepal has ever got, single largest, simple majority in the parliament. So as a result, most of the time coalitions are formed, and now when alliances are formed, each political party has either a prime minister or a deputy prime minister. So when they come together for, then horse trading takes place, and then that is the time when, they all are looking for that coveted post of prime ministership, or otherwise distribution of good positions for their own partymen who would be in the government. So as a result, this is one of the reasons for political instability in the country. I'm not saying the only reason, but one of the reasons for that. And as a result, people are dissatisfied, and they're dissatisfied. The strange political alliances that are being formed, for example, now, royalists or Maoists, they have no qualms in joining hands with either Nepali Congress or UML. So this is something which is not liked by political parties. In this election, we also saw one more thing. Some of the parties, they got good seats in direct election, the first past the post, but they could not get more seats in proportional representation. So it does give a clear message that people are, they are still supporting the candidates, but not the party. So they're unhappy with them. So the writing is clear on the message that political parties have to deliver. They have to govern well. They have to provide stable government, and then they have to stop this horse trading. If this does not stop, then political instability in the country would continue.
She mentioned the prime ministership and the horse trading going on for that. So despite being in a pre-poll alliance, Deuba and Prachand would have to work out a power-sharing deal before the new government is formed. And there are now reports that KP Sharma Oli has also reached out to Prachand to break the Congress-led alliance and stitch together a new governing coalition. So is Prachand now the new kingmaker in the house, or does he want to be king himself?
Well, the Maoist party has a, greatly reduced presence in the house. And if you look at their, this is, I think, the third election they've participated in, there's a trend decline in the support that they have. But, since it is a hung parliament, naturally, the Maoists, being the third largest party, have a pretty important role to play. And recently, I think the Gathbandhan has reiterated, the coalition under Deuba and the Maoists has reiterated that they will continue the coalition. So I think the chances are that the coalition that presently exists will continue. But of course, a lot will depend on the power sharing deal that the top leaders of the coalition have. And also depends on the extent to which you adhere to and abide by the deal. We have seen the experience of previous coalitions. After all, the Maoists and the UML under Oli had actually merged to form a party. But that party split because of a lot of interpersonal differences. So managing coalitions is quite complicated because there are so many desires and ambitions and interests of different political leaders. But I dare say that Prime Minister Sherbahadur Deuba seems to have done a reasonably good job. And they even went into the election as a coalition. Presumably, there will be some settlement, some agreement, and hopefully of longer duration.
Professor Thapliyal, the impressive performance of the pro-monarchy Rashtriya Prajatantra Party and the rise of the Rashtriya Swatantra Party point to the emergence of new ideological strands in an extremely competitive electoral space. Now, is this a good sign for Nepal, or is this a recipe for political instability to which you referred to earlier?
Well, in every election, new parties do emerge, okay? But many of them do not even complete their 5-year tenure. and some split, some merged with other parties. So it is too early to comment on Rashtriya Swatantra Party. I do not even know that which alliance they would join. One doesn't know about that right now. Now, Rashtriya Prajatantra Party is an old party, of course, but with a new leader, Rajendra Lingden. They are pro-monarchist, and this has been their stated policy since they came into formation. And they support Hindu Rashtra. They support elected prime ministership, and they want to scrap provinces. On the other hand, you have Rashtriya Swatantra Party of Rabi Lami Chame. By the way, Rabi Lami Chame was a TV personality also. He had, and his program was very popular. So people were able to personally relate with him also. Now, his party, interestingly, is also proposing directly elected prime minister. Now, he doesn't scrap provinces, but on the other hand, what he says is that there should be provincial councils which would be elected by the local assemblies. So that is what he is trying to say. So basically, both the parties want amendments in the present existing constitution. They will not be able to do so because they do not have 2/3 majority in the parliament. Now look at where they have won. Rashtriya Prajatantra Party has won in Chitwan. That is an area where generally it was for Maoist, stronghold. And interestingly, in Tarai also, some of the seats they've got there. Now, Rabi Lami Chane's party has won in Kathmandu, Lalitpur, Nuwakot. This is the area which was earlier stronghold of Nepali Congress. So they have pushed major parties and taken they've made their presence there. Second, they have also won in Chitwan, again area where Maoists were there. So they're pushing mainstream parties. These areas have young, educated leadership, youth is there. So they are, giving support to them. These two leaders are young. So people have reposed their faith on young leadership, okay? And I think major political parties should take a look at this also, because this time it is fine, but what happens after 5 years? And within these major parties also you have young leadership which is now challenging them. Late, like in Nepali Congress, you have Gagan Thapa who is trying to challenge Deoba for prime ministerial position. So I personally feel that there should be a smooth transition from old guards to the younger leadership. And if they do not take this into consideration, the time is not far when there will be disturbances within the parties also. There will be tensions within the parties. So this is something, the emergence of these parties actually show that.
Ambassador Ray, what does the rise of C.K. Rawat's Janmat party and the splitting of the Madhes vote mean for Nepali politics?
No, it's very interesting. C.K. Rawat led a secessionist movement in the Tarai. This is when the parties of the Tarai were fighting for greater rights, for identity-based politics, for a federal constitution, and there was a lot of protests. C.K. Rawat's view was that none of this is going to work, that the Tarai Madhes needs to be an independent country. And I think he gained a fair amount of popularity amongst the young, educated people. C.K. Rawat himself has studied and worked in the United States. He's a highly educated man. I think he has a doctorate. So he attracted a lot of support from the young people, and you see this in this election as well. While he's won only 1 seat in the direct elections, he's won 4 seats in the proportional representation. So certainly, but he, interestingly, in this election, his focus was on development, not on the issues relating to sort of Madhesi demands, but really on developmental issues. And the traditional Madhesi parties that had raised all these Madhesi demands of identity and greater representation, they have performed relatively badly. So it's interesting where, in the Tarai, politics used to be caste-based. Now I think the issue of development has also become very important. So I think the rise of C.K. Rawat is quite significant, and especially for the parties of that region is something that need to factor into their thinking. A related point, another part of the Tarai, there is the rise of a Tharu party. Tharus are the original Janjatis living in the plains of western Nepal. And their leader is actually is in jail. And his party has done extremely well. They have won 4 seats in the direct elections. So the politics and representation in the Tarai is also pretty fragmented. There is no one voice anymore. And this obviously has implications given the historical perspective of the drafting of the constitution and the protests in the Madhes. So it's a lot of churning going on in Nepali politics, including in the Tarai.
Now, Professor Thapliyal, together with the parliamentary elections, elections to the 7 provincial assemblies were also held. What kind of results did they throw up?
The provincial results were as fractured as
the national
elections, yes. And again, if you look at the direct election, first past the post, you've seen Nepali Congress doing well, followed by UML and then other parties. And as Ambassador Ray said, that there are certain regional parties also which have done pretty well. But if you look at proportional representation, the UML has done pretty well, in that. But on the whole, I feel that if Congress and its allies have done well, one interesting fact that we see in this provincial election is that generally one felt that in the Tarai region, most of the political parties were, they were either, Nepali Congress was generally, either you had regional parties or Nepali Congress who would win. This time you see presence of UML in the Tarai region. Now, this is something new that I am seeing, probably because they were rather in alliance with Upendra Yadav's party. That could be one reason. And if you look at Himal, that is area which is bordering Tibet, that area generally gave vote to left parties. And this time what you see, apart from in the eastern belt where you have UML in 2 districts there, other districts you have either Nepali Congress or Maoist or even Madhav Nepal's party is there. So this is a change that I have seen that. But if you talk into the government formation, I personally feel that Nepali Congress with its allies would be able to form government in most of the provinces.
Now, Ambassador Ray, India obviously had vital stakes in the election, given the close political, economic, social and cultural ties with Nepal and the 1,800-kilometer long open border, which allows citizens of both countries to traverse and work freely. So how do you think India will view these election results?
Well, India, is a great supporter of the electoral process in Nepal. And in fact, we were provided significant logistical support for this elections as we have for earlier elections. And we respect the outcome of all elections. We have huge stakes, as you said, in Nepal relating to national development issues, relating to security issues, the cultural connect. So whatever happens in Nepal is of great significance and interest to India. Having said that, we also naturally, because of these interests, have to work with whichever government is in power. So we are deeply engaged with political parties across the spectrum. And now that there is fragmentation of the vote in Nepal, I think it's very important for India to reach out to all political formations in that country. And I dare say we are doing that. We look forward, I think India looks forward to working with whichever government is formed. As Professor Thapliyal said, it's likely that the present coalition under Sher Bahadur Deuba will continue. We have excellent relations. There have been 2 back-to-back visits. And one of the highlights, of course, has been the strengthening of the economic relationship, apart from the cultural interaction. Even if it's not, even if it's not the present coalition, some other coalition emerges, I think we will work strongly with that coalition for the simple reason that in our neighborhood, I think we have to work with, whoever is in the government.
Professor Thapliyal, now China has also been making big inroads into Nepal, particularly under Prime Minister Oli, and even facilitated the merger of the main communist groups. So will it be disappointed by Oli's rather relatively poor showing at this election?
One was not even expecting Oli to muster this much support, that he has got right now, because this time he didn't have alliance. He didn't have alliance of left parties, especially Madhav Nepal, Prachanda. These not so he's gone all alone along with Upendra Yadav's party, and so now he would try to get in touch with other political parties. He would try to see what kind of alliance can be made. I do not know, because there are independents also. There's a Rashtriya Swatantra Party also. As of now, Oli has reached out to a few political parties who have won election. So he will try to do that. But as far as China is concerned, they do know that they were not able to get the left alliance. So obviously they are disappointed with that. But they also must have realized by now that ideology has no meaning in Nepali politics. And China had good working relationship with Palace also. So as such, they should be aware of this fact in Nepali politics. So when Oli tries to get in touch with other political parties, I am sure China will support his attempts in that. So I'm sure, you know, as of now, they will support Oli's attempts to.
Ambassador Ray, you want to come in on the China factor?
Well, you know, China is very deeply involved in Nepali politics today. You know, they were very keen that this left merger of the left parties continue. Unfortunately, didn't succeed. But that doesn't mean that the Chinese will not remain involved. So I see the, you know, Chinese involvement very significant. One interesting aspect of this involvement actually relates to what has happened in Sri Lanka. And I think the Sri Lanka debt crisis and the fact that they, you know, Sri Lanka went in for several vanity projects that were financed by China has had huge repercussions in the region, including in Nepal. And interestingly, the government of Prime Minister Sheikh Bahadur Deuba has told the Chinese that the Belt and Road Initiative projects that they are doing in Nepal should be financed either through grants or concessional loans. So this is an interesting spin-off. So I think people are waking up to the implications of Chinese involvement, including in internal politics of Nepal. But as I said, I don't see the Chinese engagement diminishing. If at all, it will only increase. And they're also trying to identify groups, elements, parties that are happy to work with them and support them.
Professor Thapliyal, assuming Sheikh Bahadur Deuba ji returns as the Prime Minister of Nepal, what will be his immediate challenges?
His immediate challenge would be to have a stable government. Challenge would be to keep his coalition partners together, and that is something we have seen over the years, that it has been extremely difficult, and no party or no government in Nepal has completed its 5 years tenure. Yes. So this would be his goal as well, to have a government and, you know, keep it going for next 5 years. So that would be the biggest challenge for him. Second would be not to have any kind of, you know, disturbance within his party. He has been challenged in the past by certain leaders from within his party. So that also Deuba has to look into it, because now the younger leadership is also challenging him, apart from, you know, older leadership which are challenging his position in the party. So apart from that, there are other economic issues, yes, and governance related issues. But those are the challenges for any government which comes to power, especially after post-COVID scenario. You know, it has been pretty complex there, and those challenges would remain. But for me, I think that Deuba's biggest challenge would be to keep his coalition partners together and give a stable government to the country.
Ambassador Ray, energy trade has been the big success story in India-Nepal relations. During Prime Minister Deuba's visit, the two sides signed the vision document on energy cooperation with hydropower generation as its cornerstone. Do you think now power projects will make better headway?
Well, absolutely. I mean, I think this is really a story that needs to be told, this cooperation between India and Nepal in the energy sector. India is involved in, you know, projects amounting to 3,200 megawatts. And these are our, you know, public sector and private sector companies. And the investment itself runs into several $1 billion. Then we have this government-to-government project of the Pancheshwar project, which is 5,000 megawatts. So if you put it all together, you can imagine the kind of investment that is going to come into Nepal. Secondly, the two prime ministers have given very clear directions in terms of what their vision is for cooperation in this sector. And, you know, this is part of the overall vision of having a more integrated economic space in our region, in our sub-region, especially Bangladesh, Bhutan, India and Nepal. So Nepal is now selling power to India, not only through long-term power purchase agreements, but on the spot market when the prices are much higher. And as a result of that, they've made huge revenues during the monsoon months. Secondly, now the gate is open for Nepal to sell power to Bangladesh through India. And that is a very big development. So you can see the emergence of a regional energy market in South Asia. And, you know, this I think has huge strategic implications. It will benefit all the energy producing countries. It will benefit the energy consuming countries such as India. And I think this will be a game changer in the bilateral relationship between the two countries. You know, there are nuts and bolts issues that need to be resolved, because right now some of this is still in the realm of a, you know, vision and a framework. And perhaps if the energy secretaries of the four countries, of the four BBIN countries sit down together and speed up this whole process, I think it will have very positive ramifications in terms of the bilateral relations, in terms of the sub-regional cooperation, and overall economic prosperity of the region.
Professor Thapliyal, you also want to come in on the economic cooperation between India and Nepal?
We should be concentrating more on, as he said, more on, on infrastructure development, that is one. And even on energy trade, if you see, it is not just India and Nepal. Then one can look for sub-regional cooperation and go towards other countries, which Nepal actually has already shown interest in it. And there is a move towards that. Similarly, in terms of transportation also, if you see, that highways, roadways, etc. So one can go all the way to Bangladesh, Bhutan, Nepal and India. So this is where our focus should be. And secondly, many times what happens, we talk in terms of larger projects. I personally feel that larger projects do take time, but go for those smaller projects and people-centric projects which can be implemented easily. If that happens, then it helps people from both the countries also, it helps in relationship also, and somehow it changes the perception also.
Well, thank you very much, Ambassador Ray and Professor Thapliyal, for sharing your thoughts on the Nepal elections and the future of India-Nepal ties. These elections came at a time of great turmoil in Nepalese politics. On the one hand, as our panelists have said, they point to a deepening of democracy. But on the other hand, they have thrown up a complex and fractured mandate. Regardless of what the next coalition looks like, India would like to see political stability in Nepal and a government that can work with it on a host of issues, from infrastructural development to connectivity, to benefit citizens of both countries. That is all I have for you in this edition of Diplomatic Dispatch. Thank you for watching. Until we meet again next week, goodbye.